thanks, Tim. Appreciate the introduction there. Yeah, as Tim had mentioned, today's focus is really going to be predicated on really working on the new estimating Sage Estimating Extended, formerly Timberline Estimating. And the most important thing today we're trying to achieve is there's a lot of different directions we can go, but the most important thing we found today was really to talk about kind of what's new in the Sage world of estimating extended, and kind of the direction of where this product's going, and then also coupled with pulling in the ability to do some 2D takeoff off of a new application that we're working with called eTakeoff. So a lot of this is, and the important thing that before I get underway is that this is Sage, formerly Timberline software, and the direction, the philosophy. This is not a new application; it's a generational jump. And so, this dating clear back in the DOS days, from DOS to Windows to the next gen of what you're seeing here in the Windows development, it's the same look and feel. A lot of the former users, if they're online today, there's some options that we can go to that actually go back to more of a classic look for the traditional based users that still want to see more of the drop-down screens they're familiar with back in the earlier versions of estimating. So, but the important thing today is again, the concept hasn't changed. The concept hasn't changed for more than 20 years. It's still a database spreadsheet application. I think the biggest thing that here is that above and beyond the updated user interface, we have a whole complete new back-end database engine, and that's it's a Microsoft. It's a standard Microsoft SQL Server application. I'm going to give you a couple quick points, and then I'm going to start diving in. But it's important to know that this rewrite of estimating software has that back engine for lots of reasons. It's one, we talked about database spreadsheet and kind of this Excel look and feel, but we want to make this database and this spreadsheet and estimating application very dynamic for our users. And so by having that SQL Server app really opens the door to lots of possibilities. And even though today we're talking about integrating with an eTakeoff tool and driving this spreadsheet, there's lots of other things that we can venture into, and all the way up to Revit-based, BIM modeling, to custom integrations with a software developer's kit. So having that SQL engine has been an expensive venture for Sage, but it really reaps the benefits when you start using this application behind the curtain for lots of other things you can do outside and beyond just the database spreadsheet concept. So kind of the plan is to give you some basics for those that are on that are former estimating or currently using Sage Timberline Estimating. I'm going to try to incorporate and dovetail some new features that they've added. And then once I give you the basics of estimating, I'm going to venture out and show you how the eTakeoff works, and then at that point kind of finish up the ride and then close with some questions. So at any rate, again, coming back to the core application, we've gone to a ribbons look and feel. Again, we can go back to the classic look if we want to, but if you really look up here at the top, these ribbons are designed in blocks really for the function of a workflow. The first thing you're going to do is be able to create or open up existing estimates, put in the cover page. So a lot of those features that back in the day were kind of hidden under drop downs are now exposed as the top popular commands. Then as you do your basic work here in creating that estimate, you moved into generating your takeoff and then finally closing out the job with the totals page. So these icons that are exposed out here are really designed to kind of a start to finish. One of the nice things that they've added from just an end user standpoint and getting more users kind of online quicker is we've gone to not only a ribbons look, but you'll notice down here at the bottom, these are my favorites. So whatever command you're in, whatever window you're in, you can simply come over here and say, maybe I use assembly takeoff a lot. Maybe I wind up coming over here and printing, and want to have all that information. At that moment in time, whatever you highlight and go right mouse key, you can add to your what they call a quick access toolbar. What's really nice about this is as you try to standardize your company, maybe you have a new user and the typical new users use quick takeoff and assembly takeoff, and then they go to the settings to set their locations, and that becomes their 4 or 5 or 6 things that they wind up working with, and that becomes their own customized icons and drop-downs. So it becomes a pretty handy tool, especially for getting people up and running, a lot sooner than, or a lot quicker anywhere, more efficiently maybe is a better way to say that. So, but simply what you're doing here is, if I close this out, I'm either going new or open. If I go to open, this is nothing more than going to the list of the existing estimates. And really what they've tried to do within this one application is really give you the ability not only to talk about database spreadsheet and pumping out a cost estimate, but they're also incorporating some wouldn't call it CRM, but I would call it some file management capabilities that were a lot stronger than the previous versions as well within the core app. So for example, here, there's a list of all my files. Obviously, if I wanted to search for something here and wanted to say, wood, and it'll go and search, and it's looking through that entire library and all those within all those hidden folders or those folders you might organize your estimates in. If I come in here, if I go to new, all I'm physically doing is open up the screen, and I might come in here and say, hey, I'm going to call this ASG seminar, 007, whatever the name of the job is. In addition to saving the estimates, if you notice here, if I come over here, you can organize these by branches, very similar to what you were doing back in the earlier versions. The nice thing about this is as they get loaded into these folders, you have a way of being able to go back and look at all of them across the board and not have to find all those and go to all those different folders and subfolders. When I hit OK, it just creates an estimate. And as I create the estimate, it takes me into the cover page where I can fill some things in about the job, some of the key information. As I come in here, you'll notice as I basic information that you might want to enter. And as I enter that information, all the way from job information down to crew information, maybe for those that maybe do self-perform work, you can have different rate tables. And when I'm done filling in the basic cover page information, I just hit OK, and it creates a spreadsheet. Okay. So again, I kind of moved from this block over to this block now. Now the next move here is really working with this database spreadsheet concept. Okay. Now, the concept for people that have seen this product years before or even fairly recently, I go back to it really tries to mirror mimic what an estimator goes through manually, meaning we can come in here and, of course, go to the database and start populating this estimate file with the costs and the line items that we need. One of the things that we've added over here in the new SQL version is if I come here to this drop-down, you'll notice that there's a command called Manage Estimates. And Manage Estimates now allows me to look at the whole library of all those files that are sitting out there. Now I can go into particular folders or subfolders. I wanted to go to like pre-con estimates, or if I come up here, one of the things I mentioned before and wanted to show it to you visually is you'll notice all of these folders can be set up and you can slide in your estimate, much like I'm showing here. And where I'm going with this is as I'm getting ready to create the estimate, there might be something out there that's kind of similar that I want to use as a starting point. So instead of starting from scratch, I might want to reach out to Manage Estimates, come in here and maybe look at each folder, or furthermore, click on All Estimates, and it scans through the entire list of all those files and all those subfolders and gives you a short list of all those. What's kind of cool about this is whatever level I'm at, I can always go right mouse key here and say Show All Estimates in Grid. And what happens now is all the files now become, all the key fields we're entering in that cover page become available. They come available for me to search and find past information based on those fields. It allows me to grab information. Maybe you want to take all these files that are sitting here, and we want to be able to just grab this and group them by estimator, project type, status, whatever, and now we have all our estimates organized. Well, again, we're going back to that filing cabinet because maybe there's something that's kind of similar we want to be able to utilize, and it gives us that ability. The other thing that we've done with the new SQL estimating is we've gotten a lot deeper in its ability to work with Excel. If you notice here, we can grab this information, reorganize it, regurgitate it, and then just simply click export, and it'll export it out to Excel, all that key information based on what we're looking at and the criteria that we entered. So we have that as a whole resource above and beyond just creating a new file. Once we get out of that, and if we find something great, we pull it in. If we don't, the basic core estimating premise is to come over here and use these different features to drive items into the spreadsheet. And they're just mere roads that drive to the spreadsheet. We have items and assemblies and models, and they just step up or step down. The basic concept of this is really just to open up the book and start pulling stuff in. So if I went in here to openings and said, gee, I want to open this up, and I'm going to use my control button on the keyboard and pick a few items, drag and drop, and I'm just throwing them into the spreadsheet. I might want to search for something that says, find me anything. And this is about a 8,000 item database. It's another benefit of using the full SQL Server, Microsoft, is it's a strong database engine. It's a fast engine. And if I just by hitting marker, I hit enter it on the keyboard, it instantly scans through all those items and it finds those ones I'm looking for. So I might come in here and say, I want that item as well. And I'm just, again, dragging and dropping. If I close the search, you'll also notice that under every particular phase, it says add new item. And so the idea is, hey, I've searched the land, I couldn't find it, I want to double click, and I'm just going to slide that right into the spreadsheet. And so from a functionality standpoint, now we're working in the spreadsheet. Now there's kind of that similarity of working in Excel. And the whole idea, of course, is to come in here and say 5 of these, 6 of these, 12 of those, maybe I need 12 of those too. And maybe this custom item, I just want to type in whatever it may be, and it's 1,200 square feet, and I think the unit price is $7, or maybe make that $9,000 and it back calculates. But now I'm working more on this spreadsheet. And the idea is that once these items fall from the database into the spreadsheet, now I can simply come over here and say, oh, I really want to change this description. Maybe I want to make this, instead of each, I want to call this lump sum, call it 1, and come over here and, make that $450. Or maybe I'd rather make this 0, make this $12, or let's just make that $675. These changes I'm making aren't changing the database, okay? One of the other fundamental differences between our older version and this new SQL version is that as we made all those changes I just showed a minute ago, we now have the undo and redo capability. If I click on undo, you'll notice it'll trace me all the way back, or I can go back and redo that. So I have that functionality in there as well. Some other things that I have the ability to do above and beyond just changing unit prices and changing descriptions is I can add notes. Those notes can be whatever font you want, whatever size. You have unlimited information you can attach to that. Those can come along with the item in the database. We have the ability to come in here and say, gee, I really want to attach a file. Maybe you want to browse out and grab something. And as I do that, I might want that item. I know it's not a door, but here's an example. As I click on View Attachment, it'll open up the attached file. And I'm back in the spreadsheet. So we can totally take this item that falls from a database, throw it in the spreadsheet, and completely change it, add notes, view attachment, and make those manipulations, undo, redo. Couple of things that they've done that really nicely is they have these flyouts. Instead of burning up a lot of landscape in your spreadsheet here, you can just simply hover and you have the ability to see all that information here about the item without having to have that on all the time. The other thing too, we have the ability to have custom zooms and have it set right here on the lower right to be able to establish that. And again, we go back to it's a spreadsheet work and feel like Excel. Things like where I just want to be able to hover to and get an auto sum. A lot of that kind of stuff that you'd expect to see in Excel is present here in this spreadsheet, and even more so in the SQL version. So as you work with this, and the other thing too that's important to see is, you see right now these are some of the columns that I have on that make sense and work for me. The thing that's important to understand is that within this spreadsheet, you're not limited to this view. You can simply come over here and hide columns. I can move a column from here over to here. I can rename columns. And again, manipulate it the way that you may want to as a user or a company. The other thing that's nice about these is that the changes I just made were kind of onesie twosie for that particular project. There's a command in here called layout, and for those that use this version and the previous versions, that was a version that was really kind of by each user. Now what they've done is they've gone to your personal layouts and your shared layouts. And what's nice is each user can have unlimited layouts, personal layouts, if you will, and the company can set up maybe 2 or 3 standard ways, and that's across the board for all users, and they don't muddy up their shared or standard layouts for the company. But the layouts, again, are pre-built views that you may like. For example, if I click on OK here, you'll notice now that's a completely different look and feel. It turns on some more columns. And for people that do more of a self-performed detailed mode, maybe they want to work with a production, maybe they want to work with, changing the hours here, and you'll notice all those are connected. So those are the basics of working in our spreadsheet. And again, definitely some changes and updates from the previous versions that people are currently using more of the pervasive SQL version. As you get the look and feel and the understanding of this database spreadsheet concept, now as we take that whole idea and we move into some of these other forms, and as I mentioned before, they're just merely rows that drive the spreadsheet. For users, instead of having to go into quick takeoff and go down the aisles and find those items, we have the ability to collect all that information, and as we collect it, the assembly allows us to pull all those items and kind of put them into a cart, if you will, and be able to not have to go find them every single time. For example, I may come into finishes and open up light gauge walls, and I have, and as we go through here, we have the ability to address questions. Well, if you notice the questions here and the items down here, and you can make these as detailed as you want or as conceptual as you want, depending on what the company wants to do. The idea here at this point is you might come in here and answer questions, and as we fill out those questions, we simply are addressing the things that we need. Understand, an assembly in Timberline can have unlimited questions and unlimited items that make up an assembly. This is purely a way of capturing the company secrets, the intellectual properties, and be able to address those things without having to go find those individual items. And as I answer those questions, you'll notice when I hit OK, it drives all those items back into the spreadsheet. So instead of having to go find these items, it drove all those for us. And again, once it comes in the spreadsheet, we can manipulate the information. The other thing that's important, I mentioned about the views and being able to change those views. Well, that's manipulating views within this tab. What's really nice is when you start utilizing assemblies, or maybe you're on a project that's, someone wants to see it in uniformat, or maybe you want to look at it by building A, B, C, and D. These tabs allow you to control that look and feel. If I click on assembly, you'll notice here's the items that were just pulled from the database, and here's all the items that made up that assembly. If I click on location uniformat, here's the unit format codes that I'm working with. So we look at our tabs in estimating as the ability to manipulate and look at things different ways. Those tabs can go 10 levels deep. You know, you may be building up an estimate and it might be building, floor, wing, phase, room, and you have the ability to attach that information and use these tabs to be able to resort, resequence, and manipulate that spreadsheet the way you want for that job. So, if you look here, if we go from quick to assembly, I would just say the assemblies are kind of like the recipes. And the idea with these assemblies is purely to go into each one of them. And as I open that up and double click, I have an interview. And that interview at that point addresses and drives the spreadsheet, okay? So when I mentioned you have items, assemblies, and models, okay? Models are the big brother to assemblies, and assemblies are the collection of items. So just, again, I mentioned before, it kind of steps up. Again, the concept of items and assemblies are really more predicated on, I have a set of blueprints. And those blueprints, whether it's a hard copy, whether it's 2D, whether it's all the way up to a Revit-based type of file. The goal with this is to really, I've got details I can work with and connect that data, Timberline data, and drive detailed line items into a spreadsheet because I have details in the blueprint. Modeling is more of a different, it's utilizing all the guts of the items and assemblies, but it's more of a different ride. It's hey, at this point, I don't have a set of blueprints. I have more of a kind of a back of a napkin, a couple of sheets, maybe an elevation and a floor plan. And as I open up modeling allows me to go in here and now at this point have an interview of, as I answer more high-level things. How big is it? How tall is it? You know, how many stories? And just like the assemblies, you have the ability to have as many questions as you want, many drop-downs, pictures, all that kind of stuff can be present in this interview. But it's like answering kind of that sheet of paper about high-level things on the job, and what it does is it drives the same level of details if you have a set of working drawings. So the concept here is, as I come through here, maybe I do want to see the picture, right? The utilization of this tool is not only just to drive a bunch of stuff, but as I answer this interview, and I put in some default quantities just to kind of speed up this presentation, but of course, you'd go through here and address these questions, and you'll notice it's not just what's the square footage, the perimeter, and the height. You know, there's what if in here. What if it's drill piers versus continuous footings? You know, as I come down through, what's the structure look like? What's the wall finish? Again, you can build these however you want, but what it's setting up now is as you answer the interview, it'll generate numbers, but you can always come back to this interview and say, what if we went with, you know, stucco instead of CMU? What if we went with stone versus precast? And give you that ability. What if we shrink the building? And it'll update all that information. Again, working with more of your design development type of drawings. And as I answer this interview, I hit OK, and it captures that information. And now when I say I want to send this to the estimate, I say generate, and now all that information gets populated into the spreadsheet. And if you recall, remember I started you with item takeoff and going and grabbing individual items. Well, now we've moved you all the way to modeling, where we answered a few questions, and it drove all these line items without having to go find that information. Becomes a very handy tool when you're dealing with more conceptual stuff, but want to present a fair amount of detail and work with that same data. So, and again, as we go through this whole process, and whether we're a combination of all these, when we get all this information in the spreadsheet and we manipulate our information, then what we purely do is hit F4 and we finalize our estimate. And you have the ability to have 999 add-ons or markups. And if you look here, this basically is everything coming from the spreadsheet, and everything below would be adders or markups, contingencies, and it works just like the spreadsheet. So at this point, here's our final number, but maybe prior to finalizing this number, we want to change the percentage from 10 to 15. We want to come over here and change this to $60,000. And as we do this and make these changes, again, we're not changing the database. We're just manipulating to make it work for this job. And as we're done with this, we can close this out, save it, and work with the estimating. And so again, that's kind of really the basics and the core of our estimating application. In addition to that, the new features. Now, a couple other things before I get into the eTakeoff is that, one of the things that a lot of people have asked for was, hey, maybe someone doesn't own Sage Timberline Estimating, but they want to be able to leverage from the work that was done here, and they want to do some of their own manipulations, and maybe you have that arrangement with your customer or some other user or someone in operations that maybe you don't want them to have the license of estimating. One of the things that they've incorporated is, all these things in your spreadsheet are, you have all these formulas behind the curtain, right? The beauty of this is I can hit space bar and the formulas don't go away. But more importantly is that what we were trying to do with this new product is really give it a dynamic look of lots of options and flexibility. As an example is here, as we create this estimate in Timberline, Sage Timberline, now maybe someone else wants to look at it in Excel. That also incorporates formulas. So if I come over here and say print, we've got the ability to come over here and say print the spreadsheet, and we can just purely export that information either as a PDF or Excel. And as I open that up and hit save, it'll dump that out to Excel. Well, the beauty of the new version is not only will it dump to Excel, but it has the ability to come into here and incorporate the formulas. As we open that up, one of the commands here is if we open this up and say formulas and use the calculation, we have now all the formulas that are tied in with this. And as you make changes to this spreadsheet, obviously since there's formulas, it will update the costs in this particular Excel spreadsheet with all that information that came from estimating. So that's just a good example of making our estimating application very dynamic and outside the walls. If I come back in here to estimating and we start talking about what else can we do? Well, again, today's topic is above and beyond the core estimating application. Are there some things we can do outside the box, not only shelling out to Excel, but maybe work in a 2D fashion? We have a relationship with a company called eTakeoff, and eTakeoff gives us the ability to, if you take that concept of what I was showing in those assemblies and those questionnaires, one of the things that they're doing at Sage is they're saying, well, where else can we make that information available to help be able to drive the spreadsheet back in here to Sage Estimating? So if I open up eTakeoff, eTakeoff gives us the ability to come in here, and if you look over here, here's the drawings, and of course we can come in here and set scales. Same kind of concept. You can add your own little kind of top, customized ribbon bar or icons. You come in here, of course we can set our scale, choose what it is. We can calibrate, which would allow you to go into a particular set of drawings and choose a dimension. It'll generate a scale for you. And we can do things like being able to add text, being able to add clouds and dimensioning and all that sort of thing. We can compare existing drawings where there's changes being made. But as it relates to the integration, again, the tough thing about these short snippets of time, there's so much information to discuss and talk about. I'm going to try to keep it, to the point of just working with estimating, Sage Estimating. But the idea with this now is we have a set of drawings, and after we've set that scale and maybe added some notations, over here on the left-hand side, if you take that concept of what we were trying to do back in the core estimating, if I double-click, you'll see over here on the right-hand side is the list of the questions. Those questions are coming directly from Sage Estimating and the new SQL version. And so the whole concept of this is Now I have the ability, as I'm doing my takeoff in eTakeoff, and in this case, I'm just focusing on showing an area. And when I'm done with that, it closes that up and it gives me the ability, it's answered a lot of those questions. Well, the other thing that's also apparent is maybe I had some defaults of things that I like to typically do. Like in this case, I normally use a non-slip finish. But again, these questions that I was showing back in Sage Estimating SQL are now available over here. And I can change any one of these. And as I change those, then of course that will change the prompt over in estimating and give me that different option. But the idea is that I'm leveraging from those questions that are sitting over in estimating that now have been made available inside eTakeoff. And the concept now here is, as I'm answering this information, I have the ability, there's a connection between eTakeoff and estimating called Bridge. And when I do that, I've got the ability now to just purely submit that over in estimating. And this is just showing kind of a log of everything I've taken off so that I can push that over into estimating. And when I close this out, you'll notice if I come into estimating, I'm getting there. You'll see that I didn't have to go find items or generate assemblies manually. I leveraged from what I was doing over there in a 2D platform, eTakeoff. As it relates to some of the kind of new, we talk about new features of the core estimating. This is a fairly new relationship we have with eTakeoff, but it's also a long relationship with eTakeoff. And what I mean by that is a couple of the principals there, the owner as well as the CEO, are former Timberline personnel that have years of experience of knowing that estimating application. The advantage we have with eTakeoff these days is the integration they've developed since they know estimating very well. We've been able to reap the benefits of having that background and that history. So it's a really nice relationship. It's got a lot of exciting things planned. Also incorporating with eTakeoff, it's coming out, I think, sometime later next year. I don't think there's a date yet, but I know they're working on it. There's also the ability to integrate this with Navis. And formerly there was a product called Autodesk QTO, and they're going to incorporate that ability. QTO got rolled into Navis, and part of that Navis is now that 2D takeoff BIM takeoff capability. And eTakeoff is incorporating some of that functionality as well, coming downstream. So, at any rate, that kind of finishes out our kind of a plans for today and talking about the core estimating and what we can do with 2D takeoff and some of the direction of where we're going. So what I would like to do at this point is open it up to the floor. Maybe if anybody has some questions and want to talk about some things out there, I'm happy to, again, open the floor and talk about those things.